today we're going to talk about reconditioning old ovens. This video, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how to analyze what needs to be done to a particular oven, because it changes. You know, if you see on Facebook they put up a post, oh, how do I get the rust out of this oven, and there'll be 500 answers there and 480 of them are probably wrong, because they haven't analysed the condition of the oven properly. So I'm just going to show you how to analyse the condition of your oven to assess what is needed to actually restore it back to a good working use and a nice shiny black pot like it should be. Okay, so I've got 3 pots up here at the moment, 3 camp ovens. I've actually got 2 Furphys and a little Harding up here. These are all ovens of mine in various states of disrepair. 2 of these ovens, these 2 here, have actually been through the floods, and they have the flood mud on the outside, which I'm not happy about, and it can't come off. Now, before anybody, well-meaning I know yous are, offer suggestions on how to clean the pot and get that mud off using whatever, fill in the blank. Trust me, we've tried just about everything we can think of, high pressure, high hot water, you name it. When it dries, you can still see the mud on these pots from that flood in 2022 where the whole lot went underwater. Now, it might be actually related to a bit of traumatic stress, and it might be in my imagination, but I don't think it is. I've spoken to other people who went through that flood, and they're telling me the same things. They've got stuff that they just can't clean. They can still see it, and there is nothing more vile than that flood mud to anybody that was there at the time, I can tell you. And I don't want it on my pots. I don't want anything to do with any of my camp ovens that have that stuff on them. It has to go. And there's only one cure for that, but it can be cured. Like I say, I've tried everything as far as cleaning goes, and that just keeps coming back into it. So I've given up on that. I'm just going to start from scratch. But anyway, ignoring the flood mud, because when you're assessing a camp oven, there's a couple of things that come into play here. You've got not just the rust, actually. I mean, you've got the carbon, which is built up on the outside of many years of being in fire pits. The smoke, and that will just put layer after layer after layer of carbon, and that's an issue if you want to have a nice smooth look. It's not if you like that rustic look. The other issue would be paint. Now this one here has there's a bit of paint on him here. Oh, it's on the outside, so what? It doesn't matter, I know. When you buy an old camp oven from swap meets, oftentimes those dealers will paint those ovens black with some potbelly black just to make them look pretty. And they'll paint them inside and out, they don't care. And you've got to be very wary of that, because I've actually been caught and buying ovens that looked very good and at a very good price, knowing full well they'd been painted, and got them home and put them through the process to remove the paint, and then found where they painted over the plaster that was filling the holes. And of course it fell out too. So yes, paint's not a good thing, but the methods we're going to use is going to remove the paint. Like I was saying, there's a couple of different methods we can use, but let's start up here on this little one. Let's start up here on the Harding 10-inch oven, again ignoring the flood mud, that grey colour. I'll put up another video here in a second, just showing you the flood mud in comparison to what a normal camp oven should look like, and it's quite significant. You can see it. You might notice it up here. You might just think, oh, they're old and dusty. They're not. That's flood mud on there. Anyway, let's have a look. Now, under the lid, there's a little bit going on there, but you can see how shiny and black this is underneath. This was a well-used, well-loved little 10-inch Harding camp oven. When that flood hit, it was used a lot. Unfortunately, it's been a couple of years, so it's sat there. We dried them all out as quick as we could, and we washed everything as best that we could as well. But as you can see, there's still, even though it was heavily seasoned, there's still rust in there that's coming through. But pretty much the seasoning is intact. Now, in normal circumstances, without the flood mud, I would recommend that this one doesn't need a massive lot of work. I mean, the simplest way to treat this particular little oven, and it would be very simple, I would probably just put a heap of vinegar in it and leave it overnight. And give that a bit of a scrub with some steel wool or a scour the next day and assess it again. And I have no doubt that I could get all of that rust off just with a bit of vinegar, something like that. So that would be an easy fix on this one. And then of course, as soon as you've got that rust removed, you oil it up, dry it out, oil it up, and bake that oil back on and re-season the whole thing. So that would be an easy fix on that one there. This one here, it's a 15-inch Harding. Sorry, it's a 15-inch Furphy, not a Harding. And I've actually got a 15-inch Harding, it's over there. 15-inch Furphy, similar condition, was well used, well seasoned, and I'm just going to put this lid over here. Well used and well seasoned before the flood, and hasn't had any attention since. And as you can see in there, it looks a bit nasty. It does look actually probably a lot worse than it is, because it actually was very well seasoned and very well used. So I could probably nearly get away with it. I am a little bit concerned about this center bit here, these couple of bubbles there. I'm not sure whether the vinegar would be strong enough to actually lift them. What I could do with this one is probably put him in the molasses bath. So molasses at a rate of 10 to 1 with water, and that's obviously 10 water and 1 molasses. And I'd leave it in there for a week and let it all foam up and bubble up, and it will take off absolutely all of that rust over the time. Even the really bad bits, it will remove all of that, but it will do it without removing any of the seasoning. Okay, so I could just, pretty much the same as the vinegar, it'll take off your rust bits, but it will leave the seasoning alone. Leave the vinegar in there long enough and it'll start to hurt the seasoning, don't worry about that. But for an overnight session, no problem at all. So this one being a bit worse, I'm just not real confident that the vinegar would be strong enough to do it. Certainly not in one hit. I'd probably just throw that in a molasses bath. Okay, and that would get all of the rust off there. What it won't do is take off any of the carbon on the outside, and it won't take off any of the seasoning. Molasses will only take off the rust and nothing else. And then again, oil it up, dry it, oil it up, and heat it up and season it all back in. Okay, and that's how I do that one. Now I'll just throw this pot on the floor out of the road, and we'll get this fella here, get his noisy lid off. And obviously this one, 12-inch Furphy, it's very red, it's very rusty inside and out. There's no sign of any seasoning whatsoever under the lid. The base is heavily rusted, surface rust. It hasn't pitted or done any real damage. I know for a fact the history of this oven. It sat in a shed in a coastal town right next to the ocean, and for many years, I think it was 12 years he sat in that shed, which probably meant 20, and without being used. He's actually tried to pretty it up a little bit before I picked it up by hitting it with the wire wheel. You might be able to see up in there. All the wire wheel's going to do is smear the rust. It's not actually going to remove anything. It's not, wire wheels and grinders, they're not really ideal for removing rust off ovens. Having said that, if you've got yourself a Chinese oven and you want to hit the wire wheel, I don't care. Why would I? You know, it's only a Chinese oven. But if you see anyone giving advice using wire wheels on any of these collectible camp ovens, you know you're talking to a person who has no idea what they're talking about. You just don't do that. There's no need for it. There are much kinder ways of looking after restoring vintage camp ovens than using wire wheels and grinders and all that rubbish. In actual fact, it's not so bad on these Furphys. They have nice big clear stamps and they're not that old, but you get some of them older camp ovens and the identification marks on them, a lot of the times they're already very, very worn and hard to see, hard to pick out. Wire wheels aren't going to do you any favours. I can trust me on that. They're just going to wear them down a little bit more. You don't want that. That's going to devalue the oven for a start. That's just not the way it's done. Looking at this one, yeah, there is a bit of seasoning still there where he hasn't quite hit it hard with the wire wheel, but it certainly, to my mind, I think the damage is so far gone that I wouldn't bother with the vinegar. I wouldn't bother with the molasses. I would go to the big guns on this one and use the electrolysis. Okay, and the electrolysis, it's going to get rid of everything. If there was carbon built up on the outside of the base, it would take off the carbon. If there's paint on the lid or anywhere else, it's going to take out the paint. If there's any patchwork being done sneakily in the oven, plaster or anything like that, it's going to remove all that. It's going to bring it back to the very, very raw metal. It's going to do it very quickly. The entire pot, inside, outside, it's just going to be treated all at the same time, and it's going to come out entirely brand new, like a brand new unseasoned camp oven. And then of course, as soon as it hits the air, we've got to get it dry under some heat very quickly and oil it up, and then we can bake it back on and re-season it. Now, having said that, the 3 different methods I could have used for these 3 different types of camp ovens here, I'm actually going to use electrolysis for the whole lot, because I don't like the flood mud for a start, and that's the only way to get rid of it, is to start this up from scratch and do the whole lot again. I'm going to strip them all back to bare metal, and I'm going to, with the electrolysis, and I'm going to re-season them from scratch. But I'm probably not going to do that straight away right now, as much as I'd love to. I haven't got a lot of time. I'm only home for a couple of days. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly have an assessment of another oven over here. One that I actually haven't even taken out of the bag yet. I have no idea what sort of oven it is or what the damage is on it. It was given to me to restore. And so I'm going to restore that one, and I'm going to film the proceeds while we're doing it. But we'll do the assessment of it right here and now. And then in the next video, I'll run through the whole process of restoring that oven and treating it with the electrolysis. I'm guessing that's what I'm going to use, because I haven't got it set up to do the molasses at the moment, so I can't do that. And I think it might be a bit beyond the vinegar, otherwise they would have done it themselves. Yeah, so I'm going to get that oven out, give it an assessment on here, and then the next video we're going to run through exactly how step by step to do the electrolysis on a camp oven, and followed by how to get it seasoned back up to a perfectly conditioned camp oven ready to use. So let's, without further ado, I'll just make us another space here and go and get that other camp oven and tell you the story of it. Now, it was given to me a year ago at the Newcastle Expo by a friend of mine, Heather, and she said, "Ronnie, can you take that home and restore it?" And I said, "Yeah, no worries," but I've just been very, very busy and haven't had a chance. But I've got the Newcastle Expo coming up again very soon, so I need to get it done so I can get it back to her. Knowing Heather, I'm guessing it's a Metas, but I have no real idea. I've never taken it out of the bag when it was delivered in. It's just sitting in here upside down. It's got some nice long legs. I might be wrong. Looking at those lovely long legs. What is it? It's very rusted on the outside. Actually, it doesn't look that bad on the inside. Look at that. This is a Karen. I thought it was going to be a Metas. I'll have to have a closer look, but if it's a Karen, it might not be going on. I like Karens. Is this a Metas? Oh, it's been there that long, the paper's all stuck to it. Okay. Yeah, there's no way that's a Metas. There's no way. She thought it was a Metas. She said, I'm pretty sure. I thought it was a Metas. I don't think it is. That just looks a little bit humpy to be a Metas. Heavily rusted on the top. This is an oven that's sat in a shed for a very long time, obviously. It's got all the signs of, years and years and years of rust. It's had the lid on the entire time because it's actually not that bad on the inside. It's not that bad. It's possibly had an oily substance or something in the pot. or they just didn't clean it after they last used it and then just threw it up under the bench and left it. Now, I'm going to do comparison here in a minute because that lid seems to fit. It's a little bit off. It's a little bit off. I'm not sure if that's actually a matching lid and base. It doesn't quite fit right. It's really thin. The walls in this oven are very, very thin. This was supposed to be just a analysis video on how to analyse how to restore your camp oven. It's turning into an identification video on how to identify the camp oven, because this doesn't look like I expected. Alright, I'm going to grab 2 camp ovens and put up here beside this in comparison, and we'll have another look at them and just see what compares. I'll just move this out of the road. I need, yeah, that one, I don't think it is that one. Now look at that, that's pretty obvious. That was one I had in mind. And there's another one here. Okay, I've put up 3 camp ovens here to compare with the little mystery one here that Heather sent me, and a little bit bamboozled by it at this stage. It's got very similar lid to the Karen. By the way, this one over here is a genuine Meadows camp oven. This one over here is a Karen camp oven from Scotland. So an Australian one and a Scottish one. All 3 of the camp ovens are 12-inch ovens. They've got that in common. Now the Karens notoriously have very long legs, and I'm going to show you those legs there. They are quite long in comparison to the any of the other ovens. Actually, they're very long compared to the other ovens, which makes them very desirable for some reason to a camp oven collector. We love long legs on our ovens, and we love high domes like that. So there's something about that combination that is very appealing to the camp oven collector, and we'll spot that in the back shed a mile away. The Metas notoriously have quite a flat lid, which is a bit of a shame, but that's just the way they did them. But this particular oven here, it has a very deep well in the coal catching space around the edge, very deep, and quite a bubbly domey lid, but it's not as high for a start. The legs are shorter. You can see the difference in height here as the Karen, and the dome itself is nowhere near as high, but also that the lid handle up on here is a lot thicker on this particular oven, and this is very, very fine on this one over here. Now the ears, yeah, see the Karen's ears, they're the 2 pieces, one that comes up from the wall up on the side there, and the cross piece, they're both the same size, and they're very thin in comparison. It's definitely not a Karen, I can rule that out. But if I go to the Metas, now the lid handle is similar. This one actually is chunkier, quite a lot chunkier at the base, and the ears, let me get his lid up, handle up here, the bail. The ears are pretty close, but the horn is actually, there's a wider gap between the horizontal and the base of the horn and on this oven than there is on the Meadows oven. So there is a difference there. Okay, let's have some closer looks. We know the lids are completely different. So, I mean, you can barely see it, but there is a mark there. Which way does it face? That way. A mark there, Meadows 12. And it comes in various forms. It can be Meadows 12-inch sometimes. That's all over the place, the way they did that. But there's no sign of any pitting where there might be possibly lettering on the outside there. And looking at the shape of the lid now, I'm actually not even going to bother to look for that, because I can tell by that that is not a Meadows lid. It's just too high a dome in comparison. The walls are very thin, and a thin wall is the first sign of a pretty well made camp oven. Like it wasn't made by a bunch of mugs. There are a lot of rough old no-name camp ovens out there, unbranded. We don't know who made them, which foundry made them, but they're very thick, ugly looking things, and it's not one of them. The better foundries that were producing them en masse, the more well-known foundries, they generally had very, very fine walls. In actual fact, the older the foundry too, the old foundries generally had very fine castings compared to the newer castings. So the Meadows is beautiful too. It's got a beautiful fine wall, no question about that. But what I want to have a look at is the Sprew. I'm just going to drop this lid somewhere I won't break him. Take him up over here. If we have a look at this Sprew, the Sprew being the bulgy area on the bottom of the base. Now this is where the metal actually went into the mould and they chopped it off, and it's always, you know, various types of thickness, roughness, shapes of the Sprew, depending on the foundry and how they did it. And it is different. I can see that it is different. It's quite a large bulge on this one, and the Meadows one's very flat. It's a bit of a bulge there, but not much. They will vary a little bit. One Meadows will be a little bit different to another Meadows too. It's not a foolproof way of seeing the difference of variety. But I'll tell you what, looking at those legs, they are much finer than a Meadows leg. They're a lot finer. They do look, oh, that carron needs cleaning, significantly longer. But they are much more in style with the carron than they are in the Meadows. You know, I don't know what this is, to tell you the truth. I've got some ideas, but I'd like to run it past some of my expert mates. I'm not the greatest identifier of ovens, as you might think I am. I'm the first to admit that. I know certain brands very well, but it doesn't take much to throw a spanner in my works and I won't have any idea. But I do have friends who are very good at identifying camp ovens, and I might have to get some advice on this one myself. Personally, I'd nearly say an Etna. I'm leaning towards an Etna. I do have an Etna here, but it's very big. I have an 18-inch Etna down here. The pots, the ears on the Meta are set quite low. The ears on this one are set quite high. Now, I believe that's a bit of a Scottish signature too. Scottish ears here. They're set very high on the pot. Set very high up towards the top of the base, whereas the Metas are set down a little bit. So I could be on the right run here. This could be some sort of a Scottish camp oven, I believe. But anyway, all that aside, very, very clear to me that vinegar and none of these other methods are going to work on this. The assessment has been done. The identification is still ongoing.